Call the meeting to order. We're ready, Aaron?
Yes, sir.
All right.
I have some of the other.
We had all the presentations, and so now we just, we got Alex's email, and then Jamie, everybody got, this is the sheet we'll be working off of, the notable item sheet. Figure out what we want to do. Last week, we just started, went down each department. And get Alex's email up here. All righty. First two, general government pay study and pay adjustments per the study. So, were these in last time?
They were not, no, sir.
Yeah.
This is something that was
Yeah.
on the council priority list, but I neglected to put it on here.
Yeah, you told me that in.
So
Yeah.
it was an error on my part. I apologize. I just wanted to make sure this was on there. I didn't want it to get put in the budget and y'all not weigh in, of course.
So go ahead and repeat what you said this morning to me, Alex, about these two items then.
Sure. So they're linked together. You can't really do one without the other. The background on it is we did one in about the 2018-2019 range. And ideally, you do one every 3 to 5 years. They're common in the private sector, public sector, much more common. They're regular occurrence in a lot of places. And the idea is that salaries and jobs change over time, both because of the market and because naturally some people take on more responsibilities, the role kind of changes. So the idea is you have a third party that comes in, they evaluate what each job does, create an updated job description, and then from there, they go and look at basically competitors, folks that would be paying these people, folks that could potentially steal away the same people. For us, for police officers, it's other police departments. And they do an analysis using their expertise and come back and say, okay, these people you don't need to adjust, these people you need to adjust based on X, these people you need to adjust based on Y. And the idea is to make sure that everyone in the organization is being paid fairly and based on the market. And the idea is that if you don't do that, then it's going to cost you more in the long run because services are going to suffer. That's probably a 1 minute too long explanation of what it is. Thank you for listening.
Who typically does that study?
There's several firms that do it.
Okay.
We've got several options, and we've got one that we found that was also the cheapest that we liked the best, which always.
All right, any comments, questions? We didn't talk about it last time.
When was the last one done?
Say 2019, I believe.
You can do them every 4 years or so then?
That's a good way. You can do them a bit more often if times have changed. I think we've had some weirdness over the past few years with salaries, so it's probably about time.
Well, I always hate to be the devil's advocate, but I guess I'll say it again. As I said last time, you know, increases that staff is going to get this year is 9.5%, or somewhere in that range, depending on CPI. CPI is 4.5 right now, but so to adjust it another $50,000, we just gave the police officers a raise. they were competitive, so it just seems like to me that this might be able to wait a year. So that's my opinion.
Is the $50,000, I see that's contingency, Mayor, is that, that's budgeted, but would there be a council review and decision of the pay study before we decide to spend that?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Mayor? Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of a placeholder in contingency, so we don't know what the number would be, right? If we did, we wouldn't have to do the pay study. We think it'll be lower because of some of the adjustments the council has made. Council has been very responsive to needs. Kind of a placeholder, and so we would kind of bring y'all, all right, this is the adjustments that are recommended, and y'all would make the decision to approve it or not.
All righty. So we need decisions tonight. So I don't hear any comments. What's the pleasure of the council? You know, we don't need to make a motion. This is a consensus.
Good with it?
Brad's okay? That's one.
I'm more okay with the study and then figure out the contingency part
All right.
at a later date. So
Right.
I guess I'm okay with it.
Yeah, we got to do the study first, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, but if this asks for both, I'd do the 7 and we'll figure out if we're going to add later.
Yeah.
My only concern is because we've had such a funky last 2 years with inflation, if doing the study now will make sense, or as the mayor proposed, doing it later, maybe next year when maybe we can settle on what the new normal is. That would just be my only thought about it. Doing, essentially, like, the numbers could be skewed, right? We do the study now, and then next year,
We go into a recession.
that, or just, I don't know, like, hopefully inflation gets closer to what the new normal might be. I just don't like an outlier year, and that's what 2021 or 2022 could be for us, and skew the whole study. I don't know if they do that or factor that in.
Could the study be done, when is the study to be done, by the way? I don't think that's a great point. Could the study be done in the spring of 2024? The same budget year, but let the inflation curve normalize a bit. Are you
Yeah, that could definitely be an option. We could, wait until early 2024 to start it. I do think if you do it, you need to kind of follow through with kind of enacting at least substantially the changes. Otherwise, don't do it, right? Because then you could potentially have a situation where you're publicizing like, hey, these people are not being paid less than the market, including the morale hit. So I think if you do it, you just need to be prepared to kind of implement it. Timing wise, it can absolutely wait until 2024 if we want to wait a little bit, if we want to normalize. Sure.
I like that idea.
Okay.
Next spring.
Next spring or punt it to the next budget year? You can't do it in the spring. If I'm hearing Alex correctly, you can't do it in February, March, get it done in June and then implement it. It'll mess up our budget stuff. So I think the decision's either to do it so that the recommendations can be voted on this time next year. I don't know how long the study takes, or move it to, as Graham suggested, maybe 20, and the mayor too, put it in the next budget year, understanding that staff is getting a non-inflation adjusted increase this year, which should benefit everybody. But in 2024-25 budget year. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that makes sense if we do it in the spring. You're right, you won't be able to implement it in time for the fiscal year to be over. Thank you, Graham. But Stephen? Heather?
I mean, how long does these studies take?
Probably a couple months. That'd sound right, Ms. Reed.
Okay.
So what's our consensus?
What's the
then?
consensus here? I need to hear.
Maybe I don't understand. I thought that, like, for this study, didn't they just present something to us not long ago that had comparable pay from different towns?
Please.
That was please.
Oh, so, but not for
For other
everyone.
staff.
Okay.
It's not a huge number in the big scheme of a budget, so maybe if it's only 2 months, I would then maybe come back and say, let's try to do it the first quarter of this year, 2024, have the results in time to discuss it this time next year, and by that time, inflation should have normalized, I think, by all measures. But I would be fine to wait another whole fiscal year if you wanted to as well. I can go either way.
All right,
I'm fine to wait too.
all right, Stephen?
Sounds like the general consistency is maybe to wait a budget year for this.
All right, we'll do the study. January, February, March. March, April, May timeframe.
I would recommend, if we're not prepared to fund the implementation, just to hold off on the study altogether, if y'all would be okay with that. That's, when you talk to the folks that do these kind of studies, they say, hey, if you're not ready to kind of put some money aside for implementation, just don't do it. Because if you do it and you don't set aside funding, it's all public record, right? People see that, and it just causes morale issues. So,
Okay, well, I'll take your recommendation on that, so we're gonna punt this to next year then.
okay.
All right, I don't think any notable items were on the police. But just one last chance. Anybody have any comments, questions on anything on the police item, budget there? You know, it doesn't have to be on the notable items. It could be in the operating budget too. If anybody has any questions or concerns, Chief is here.
The only thing I have about this is just that some of this seems like it's, just regular operational cost that
Hey, Taylor.
we can't really get around.
Right, yeah. You know, the only thing I talked about last week was,
How's it going? Thanks.
you know, right now in the vehicle replacement program, we're at 100,000 is our policy. So we want to continue that. The cost of vehicles and going up, and then we need Chief to give us his input and data on, does it benefit us to roll at the 120 or not? Does it cost us money? You know, gives him a year to look at it, but obviously we're going to replace these, so. But everybody good with the police department? Any concerns, questions?
I guess that's a quick one. So is it a state requirement for the in-car camera?
No, it is not. Problem is, most courts are wanting camera footage now. Perfect example, we have a DUI that went to trial today that was over 2 years old. Well, our retention schedule is 2 years. So the DUI was not there, so now they filed a motion to dismiss because there's no in-car camera or body camera footage. So we kind of moved into that generation, that cycle where everyone's expecting there to be in-car camera and body camera footage. But no, there's no state requirement that we have.
Is the body camera running when they're in the vehicle?
Yes, actually, well, I'll back up. If they turn their emergency lights on, it activates the in-car camera and it automatically activates the body camera. We have a number of different triggers. And after the officer health shooting the other day, we're looking at additional triggers to ensure that the cameras all activate at the same time. So we have the most coverage of documentation.
Okay. And how many cases does the in-car camera come up? Annually.
Normally, traffic enforcement, DUIs, UWIs, not necessarily just a criminal matter, but if we have a traffic accident where they're captured on camera, that can even be subpoenaed in a civil insurance claim. If our officer is involved in an accident, we have crash sensors, so if they get in an accident, those cameras kick on automatically, so we can see what was occurring before an officer was involved in an accident. So there's just a number of uses for our camera as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, any other questions on the police? All right, we'll leave it as is, so moving on. Transportation and engineering. So obviously the 800,000, we talked about that last week, and then the sidewalk study. So let's do the sidewalk study first, since that's the lesser of the two.
Well, I'm of the opinion that if we've started a sidewalk policy, a sidewalk safety program, then you have to sort of do the study. So I don't know how not to do it unless you pause it for a year, but I remember the sidewalks at Callenwood in my district, south end of town, needed a lot of repair. We had a fellow fall and hurt himself pretty badly. So again, I think if you start, and that is one of the issues with starting a program, right? You start a police department, you have a big budget in 10 years, and start a sidewalk policy, you have to maintain it. So I'd be in favor of keeping it and continuing it.
Concur.
All right, thank you. Well, we did talk about 50,000 was just a placeholder.
Yeah, I think Patrick was going to walk half of the sidewalks. You're going to do the ones between here and the hospital, right? On your lunch break, you're going to mark those?
Sure.
Patrick walked every day, we heard last week, so.
All right, any other comments? Everybody okay with it? Anybody not? All right,
What's that?
I hate how expensive everything is.
yeah, I think that'll come in under $50,000.
Okay.
All right,
I do have just a quick question.
all right.
This budget currently assumes that we're moving in, how much from the general fund?
How much,
Reserves.
how much from reserves? 1.5.
1.5
That's without the 800,000.
for the street resurfacing.
Oh, for street resurfacing, that would be in addition to what we're already moving in, or?
I just want to understand, while we're going through this, it just be, and I just want a couple sentences, like, what we're walking through now, we're effectively, like, what, 1.2 million over budget or something like that there? Mm-hmm. Okay, all right.
That's before the 800,000. So you gotta,
Yeah, so that's before this line item right here.
yeah, the 800.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, I mean, I just wanted to know the numbers that were working in between, the guardrails, if you will.
All righty, so the resurfacing, Brad had an idea last week to do the program in stages, do 2 stages. Prices of asphalt come down. But Brad, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I mean,
No, and
I thought it was a good idea.
there's no science behind it, but if what's driving the cost is the inflationary effects of asphalt pricing, right, which have already, by the way, started to come down. I actually looked it up the other week to see, and it started that nosedive as everything else mostly has. But the thinking was, instead of an additional 800 on top of the 400 from the state through the Powell bill, is there logic in just doing a little bit less since we're over budget, tapping into some reserves, do 600,000, let Kevin issue a fall contract, and then another spring round of paving when prices might be lower, assuming the trend continues. Kevin said last week, I thought I heard him say that it's feasible to do a spring and a fall contract. And I also caveated that by saying, if we're doing well and the budget's low and we can receive a budget ordinance amendment to do another 100,000 in the spring contract because we're showing savings and the bang for the buck is really good. I think we'd all be welcome to receive good news like that. So that was my recommendation. If we're going to do a sewer study, which I'm in favor of, sidewalk study, all the other stuff, I think we might be able to save on the 800,000 by taking it down to 6, and that wasn't a research number, that was just cutting 25% of it. That would be my recommendation, 600,000 additional, seeing what somehow Patrick, you're in my mind the rest of the night. See if Patrick can work with Kevin to get the price lower in the spring.
All right, thank you, Brad. Any comments on the 800,000 on the resurfacing program?
Just a side note, I think we need to come back maybe and discuss a little bit about the idea that some of the worst roads are gonna be 10 years or 8 years into that budget. That did not settle well with a lot of folks. At least that's the feedback I've gotten. I think we need to see how we can better partition that a little bit, because hearing that some of the worst roads are gonna be 10 years away, that was a lead balloon, to say the least. So just something to think about.
Well, now, each road is scored,
Right.
and so,
But they said the worst ones
Would be fixed
would be
last.
fixed last because it's,
right, because it's,
Yeah.
but they said it could be up
Good
to
money
10
after.
years.
Right. I mean, it might be one of those things where perception is worth some type of value there. Yeah. All right.
well, we determine, Kevin gives us his input on which roads need it. They score them, and then it's up to us to make a decision on what roads. I mean,
Priority.
That's a
Yeah.
slippery slip for, it'd be a political decision.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I'm just bringing it up as
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah, that's what your constituents are telling you.
yeah, they were not, I did get a couple of inquiries to 10 years. It just didn't go over well, that's all.
All right, any other comments on, or any other ideas on 800,000?
What, 600,000, right?
Well, that's Brad's recommendation.
Yeah. Is it 600?
That's Brad's recommendation. That would put us at 1.8 million. Right, instead of, well, no, we're at 1.4, so that would put us at 2 million over budget.
What's two,
Just be aware, 100 of that CARTPO money, the next section's coming back. So,
Right.
so we're doing okay, cutting a little bit.
I'm fine with whatever.
I'm fine.
Okay?
Yep.
All right, that's a consensus, but Taylor Ray, you okay? All right, 600,000 it is. All right, we got that, Alex?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Next up is planning and zoning. Feasibility study on the tractor building, the marketing of it, and then, of course, as Brad just mentioned, we're getting 100,000 back on this CARPO grant. So any other comments on those items?
so just so that I'm clear here, this is really 100,000 in grant and 25 of our money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really only adding to the bottom line 25,000. Is that an?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So wait, man, is the consultant and the marketing tied into receiving that grant?
Yes, sir. Those are separate. The grant is more on the hospital light rail area,
Okay.
that area.
And I know we have this item on for later. Why are we using a consultant when we might have that on potential lease?
Or the realtor representing us.
This was part of the plan before we got that far, to be honest with you. So, there likely will be some costs, associated with this. We don't know how much. So you could potentially, you could leave it in, just knowing that, or you could take it off and just say, all right, we'll do a budget amendment, whatever cost we have. Make sense or no?
Well, we know we're gonna have to spend it because we're gonna vote on the gentleman tonight, and, what we call it.
It'll probably be more than that amount, I'm guessing, if we get a good solid lease like we hope for the property.
Then we'll have an income to offset that too.
I'm okay just leaving it as is.
Yeah, placeholder.
That's right. You okay, Brad, with that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Graham, how's looking?
Yep.
Okay. All right, Public Works, HVAC. All right, here we go. I don't think we still don't understand why we gotta spend 50,000 on a design, but let's try to figure that one more time tonight.
Okay.
If we go out for an RFP,
I thought you would.
that's the first step, right?
Yeah, we are,
We go out for an RFP. They give us their proposal, which includes the design work. They've come out, they do their investigation and analysis of the building, and then, you know, bid. So,
so ultimately, we are subject to the Mini Brooks Act here. So we have to go the route of request for qualifications first, given the scope of what's gonna be encompassed in this design.
that's free. Request
So-
for qualifications.
It would be a part of a design build scope of work, but we cannot do design build for commercial buildings, well, for government buildings, under the Mini Brooks Act, because we don't know the full specifications and we don't have a full understanding of the exact work that needs to be done. So we don't know what types of units we need. We don't know the routing and the appropriate distribution that needs to be done. And so we want to look at optimizing efficiency with that design. So it truly is a full redesign of the mechanical system of the HVAC system. So it's a little different than just a standard residential home where you can do that design build. We are subject to those state requirements, making us go through the RFQ process.
Okay, so we send out 5 requests. So do we have to pay for all 5 of them? I mean, so how do we know who to pick? I mean, that's what I thought, request for RFP was the process.
Sure, Mayor, it's a good question, and I appreciate you asking that. There are several ways to kind of go about kind of construction projects. One of which is the traditional way, right, where you pick a designer, they do design, and then you bid out the design, you go with the lowest responsive bidder. I think what we're talking about would be a design build, right, where you bring in somebody, they do the design, and they do the construction, right? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So, that was allowed back in the 2013 range, that was allowed by statute. And when we consulted with legal, there's a set of criteria that we have to be able to satisfy in order to legally, under the statute, be allowed to use the design-build process. And after consulting with legal, the conclusion was we're not able to kind of satisfy the statute, and we wouldn't have the legal authority to go through the design-build process.
Well, I read Melanie's recommendation. It wasn't a slam dunk. It was,
I hear you.
I saw some gray, I read between the lines, I saw some gray area in there, so I don't know. I'm just trying to figure, I don't remember us doing this process when we built this town hall, so maybe it's different under new construction, I don't know. But I don't remember us going out for, spending $100 grand on a design, and then maybe we did, I don't
We did,
We had the architect draw it out exactly the specs, and the builder followed those specs and did it exactly. And I think, along those same lines, I think that's what this process does. We can't, if we send out a request for proposals that is so broad, it's like fix our air conditioning in this building, you're gonna get 6 different ways of doing it. But it's such a complicated asset that we have to know what we're asking for. And that, I think, is the purpose of the study, is that here's an expert that's gonna tell us exactly what we need, and we'll put that out there. It's like the architect did for this building. He'll come out with what's needed, how to do it, when to do, all the pieces put together, and then we put out a bid process with that as the defined goal, and then we can get these bids back, and they'll all know exactly what we want, rather than them telling us, we think this will work best for you. They're just trying to get a bid. That's what I think.
What did they say when they came out here last week? Did they say every piece of ductwork needed to be moved, or did they just say you need new outdoor units and some modification to the ductwork?
I'm sorry.
When McClintock came out to meet with you
Oh,
last
for the
week?
John Deere building?
Oh, they were meeting with you for that building?
Yeah,
I thought
it
they were
was-
meeting with you for this building.
No, it was just for the,
Okay, sorry. I thought it was
the general
for
idea of cost.
this building.
for
Okay, never
replacing it,
mind
yeah.
then.
How much is, okay, so I'll ask, because now you just jumped in another question. How can we ask them for a general proposal for that building? It's owned by the government too, and we can't do the same thing for the building next door.
Well, I think that was more of an inquisition on our end to kind of figure out how much it would cost to replace it, so we can use those as we work through a deal with potential tenants. So that was really just trying to get an idea of costs and what needs to be replaced, not exactly how it needs to be replaced. So it was really just them coming out saying, it does need to be replaced, and we think it'll be just to replace the unit itself. It's not even looking at what the tenants who would occupy that building, what their needs would be. So it's basically just looking at the unit
But I
itself.
guess my thing is, it's a commercial building. It's owned by the government. That's a commercial building. That's owned by the government. I'm not understanding the whole third-party system without even getting the advice on what needs to be done. You know what I mean? Like if say you just called in a couple of companies and they said, we think this is an easy fix. You could put some sensors in here. We could modify this. We could do that. Like, not a whole new redesign. Like, couldn't we ask that first before paying for somebody to do a redesign? Like, the companies do a redesign in-house. I guess that's why I'm not understanding the third-party redesign.
It's,
Like, each company has their own master designer for commercial or residential or whatever they're doing. I don't understand the third party. That's what I'm not getting. That's the part I'm missing.
I truly think it's just the state parameters that we are required to abide by. I see what you're saying. I'm trying to figure out what the best way to actually say
Well,
it
because
is.
like last year, remember when Brian was giving us the quote, like never was there a redesign included in that. It was just a general price for replacement of the units.
Is Melanie coming to the next meeting?
No, sir.
Melanie?
Do we have an open contract with McClintock to take and maintain our systems that we currently have?
No, I just reached out to them and had them come out and test that system over there, and half of it works, half of it doesn't, and it was established in early 2000s.
Okay, that was just kind of maybe that would be one of those gray areas that we already had a contract with somebody to come out. Okay.
I will say I reached out to the city of Charlotte and their facilities manager, And they do this, they have to abide by this process as well. Granted, they have on-call contracts, on-call service contracts that have already been initiated. So they've already got firms that design their MEP infrastructure, and then
I guess
they
my thing
have
is,
to
how do we
formally bid it
even
out.
know that it completely needs a redesign without somebody telling you it needs a redesign?
Well, you did mention that presentation that Brian gave to y'all, and within that, it does say redesign the ductwork within
But
that.
did y'all get a HVAC company to tell you it needed to be a redesign, or just he said it needed a redesign?
That was, Brian specifically?
Yes.
That was from a MEP company that does construction.
They said
have
the whole thing needs to be redesigned.
essentially, yes.
One more last question. What's the square footage of that building? Heated square footage?
I believe it's just under 7,000 square feet.
And here's what I'm gonna say here. My concern is that my house is roughly 2,000 square feet, and it cost me 11,000, okay? If we're just kind of doing some odd numbers here, that's only about 3 times as much. You know, 50 grand, taking the exact housing unit should be enough coldness to be able to cool that building down as far as square footage and being able to blow enough air. I mean, I just, it kind of feels like, I don't know, it feels awful high. That's just my thought pattern.
Yeah, the 50 is too high.
Well, I mean, it just feels like, I mean, if it's only 7,000 square feet, I mean, there's basic laws of physics of how much air movement is going to have to cool down 7,000, and it's, you know,
I understand.
yeah, I mean,
Now, the other thing is, so let's say we do the design study. Are they a separate firm then? Do they have a part of their company that come in and do the installation as well?
We would ultimately, based on that opinion of probable cost, probable construction cost, we would either formally or informally bid it. So we would essentially have to bid out the construction costs. So I'm sure they would pass it along to frequent contractors that they use for construction. But we would have to go through, depending on the price, the informal or formal bidding process.
Well, yeah, but would it be the same company doing the engineering and the installation?
It could be. I can't say for sure. It could be.
They're out there.
It could be design and construction, yes, sir.
Because that's the way I'd love to do it, because, you know, that way, get a better bid, more competitive, because they want the business if they don't overinflate the redesign number.
Agreed, and I'd like to think that they would include that in their submittal of qualifications, basically saying we do design and we build as well.
All righty.
Is
Yes,
this the
no?
max you expect, or could it be, come in under?
It could be over. I will say with the Mini Brooks Act, we can't base things off of cost. However, if something comes back ridiculously overpriced than what we were planning for, we can take a step back and say, okay, maybe.
I'm at the study.
He thought you said over. Could it go over? You said could
Now,
it go
will
under?
the study be 50 or less?
Could
Oh,
be-
it could be less, yes, yes, sir.
A lot less? Could be?
Could be.
Okay.
We just don't let them know it's $50,000 budget, which public record, they'll look it up, but yes, no,
I
comment?
don't get it, so I can't. I just don't,
I'm still doing some mathematics here.
Okay, take your time.
I can't imagine paying somebody $50,000 to come up with a plan that the HVAC companies themselves come up with. Like, I don't get why you would pay, I've got to be missing something. I'm missing what am I missing?
State requirement,
State requirement.
the law that says we're operating different than a homeowner or business. That's all I can point to, and I don't know.
I mean, that's all, but I just don't.
It-
So the state says you have to pay somebody to come up with a plan that the companies themselves are gonna come up with, and then you go pick the company that came up.
I think it's so we
What am I
don't
missing?
cast too wide of a net. So what I'm hearing is we're doing the design so that we don't get a bunch of bids coming in that might not actually meet what we need. Because if you just say, come in and repair or put in a new unit, you could get Bobs and Bobs,
Yes, Bob.
you know, coming in and like not actually knowing what they're gonna do, and then you end up spending $400,000 because your specs aren't
Yeah.
on point, right? Is that a fair statement, or am I off?
No, that's a good summary.
I
So
think it's
here's the
also-
concern I
I
have.
think it's, real quick, on that point, I think it's also the opposite too. That is correct. I think it's not to cast too wide, it's also to make sure that we're not just picking one and getting a inflated price. It's the whole competitive bidding that governments do. That's sort of the whole premise of these acts, that they require us to put out 3 bids, 5 bids, 6.
I'm fine with all, we can get 100 bids. I just don't see why we'd
You
pay
just don't under-
somebody for a bid.
For design.
For a design when, I don't know, we don't even know how bad it is.
Yeah, I mean, just doing a basic and picking the highest numbers possible for 7,000 square feet at $30 per square foot for commercial
On the
AC.
specs.
Or the
That's
specs.
$200,000,
Which, that's what,
$200,000. So do we think that, is this just a placeholder? Because, I mean, we're saying that the design will cost 25% of the total cost. So do we think that that will be incorporated into the actual work that gets done?
Mind rephrasing that? I
Yeah.
apologize.
So I took the highest numbers that were on several web pages. It says roughly $30 per square foot at 7,000. That's $200,000 roughly. Well, 50,000 is 25% of that. Will that come off of the actual implementation price? So in other words, if it's a $200,000 job, will this 50,000 basically make the installation, yeah, like a credit? Or will,
Only if it's the same guy.
only if it's the same guy? It's
Well,
probably
no, I
true.
don't even, that makes sense, but do they do that? I don't know.
Good question. And I don't know if I have the answer to that at the moment. I would think that, just right off the top of my head, I would think that we would pay for design, and then that would be the cost of construction. So it would be $200,000 in addition to this up to $50,000.
Yeah.
So 250 total.
I'm sensing
You want to help me, don't you?
some hesitancy with the number. Is there a number that the board would be comfortable with?
I think, what, Heather and what I was talking about, we just don't understand.
I don't get it.
I understand it's the state requirement, Mini Brooks Act, but,
Yes.
I'm like Stephen, if, when we go out for the bid, set the expectations that, hey, we paid you X amount of dollars for the design. We've already paid you for that, so it should come out, it should be included in your your quote. So I don't know if that's, permissible or not, but,
Help me.
If I may, you might could use the analogy when you want to build a home. Okay? Your contractor doesn't build up the plans, your architect does.
Yes.
Okay? So you can't just go to the contractor and say, build me a house. Well, how do you want it built? I don't know what you want built. So this design, we don't know exactly what needs to be done to fix our air conditioner or HVAC correctly.
Yes.
So we're gonna hire that architect to tell us,
That's the part I disagree with.
okay, but that's the
law.
process.
That's the
But
law,
the
is to
process.
hire
We
that
need to know,
architect.
we need to know a correct design so that the people who build those designs can come in and build it.
Is that part the part that's the requirement, is to get the architect?
Well, we have to go through all the state statutes.
That's the part that I'm missing. And just for, not even that it's worth anything, but just for my background of my husband being in plumbing and a sister with HVAC. And it's been my whole life. So he was a salesman, and then now He's at the company and they sister with HVAC. He just, they build out stuff all the time, but nobody tells them how to. So like the architect designs the house, right? The contractor builds it, and then they subcontract, but they don't go off of, this is what I'm not understanding. They don't go off of somebody else's plans, because what if they don't agree with those plans and they don't honor them? So like, what if somebody comes up with a design plan and then you get the bid,
$50,000 for it.
and then you get the bids and say 5 different companies say, that's not a good plan, we're not doing that. Or we'll do that, but we're not gonna honor it because we don't think that was how we would have gone about it.
That's what they asked for when they did the request for proposals. Here's what we want,
Yeah,
please provide a bid for it.
that's fine. I'm not getting it. Y'all can vote for it.
Well,
I'm not getting it.
I understand it, Erin. That was helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
So when they bid, they know that they're bidding on this idea.
Everybody bids the same,
Essentially,
for the same
yeah,
thing.
I understand
Apples
that,
and
yeah.
apples.
I get that. I gotta stop. I gotta stop.
I'm okay. Fair, that's a fair price, right?
I don't know, that's,
seems like
Or
a
up
lot.
to 50, I think is what you keep saying.
It could be more, it could be less. We really,
We're just budgeting
$50,000, I could
Yeah.
buy everybody a
Tell you what,
upwindow unit.
give me 30, let me go see what happens, and if I need more, I'll come back. Can we do that?
what
That
was
work?
30?
30.
$30, $30, I think is what he said.
The only other thing I was gonna say is like, could we have, instead of, this is like a 2-tier process, could you call it McClintock and go, hey, look, we're thinking about replacing this unit over here. What do you think about it? And kind of get, and find, I mean, is that where the $50,000 came from already? That it was gonna cost that much to design a new system over there? I guess this seems a little bit, yeah, I mean, I'm no HVAC person, but it's not that complicated. So I just, 50 grand does seem a little bit high.
We good with 30 then?
Yeah, 30,000. I'm not really okay with 30,000. I think it should be more like 5,000, but that's just what I
Up
think.
to 30.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would do 5,000.
but I mean, I'm just pulling that number out of my rear. So, I mean,
But who set the 50,000 price? Like,
I,
what's
I
that
I think it's a
benchmark, like-
placeholder. We were gonna do it all one year, and we tried to move back the rest, and we just said 50,000. Well, we don't know. I guess we don't know. Again, it goes back, when you pick these designers, you pick them based on qualifications, not lowest responsive bid. So we'll know once we go through by law and pick the most qualified person, they'll tell us what their price is. And we can either say, yeah, we like it, or no, we don't like it. You guys gotta come down. So, I think we don't know. It's a guesstimate at this point. I would say just, if you, just give me a number and we'll go through the process and we'll see what it is. And regardless, I'll bring it back to y'all and y'all can approve it. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay.
So one item on that, are we allowed to select designers that also do the work? Are we allowed, so can you come back with a few different designers? We say, we don't want this one, we want this one because they actually do the work. To hopefully credit for that. And my other concern is you run into this in construction, right, where.
Right,
to
right.
Your point.
It's a Fox Garden, the in-house.
Yeah, you
Um,
have someone else designing when someone.
Yeah, I think typically when you do design build, you kind of make that decision up front. In my experience. In Wadesboro, we did design build and we built a fire station that way. And we trusted the contractor. We knew he had a long history of work in the county, especially with fire stations. And we also had third-party inspections come in and look at it pretty exhaustively. So my initial reaction would be, I don't know, but I would suspect no, you'd want to get somebody different. But I don't know. We'd have to research that further.
I don't want to get into like design, bid, build.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you run into a lot of issues because the design team, the contractor is not
Right.
in on the process. And then, yeah, I get it. They're building, they know what specs they need to build to, but they've never really seen it.
I don't think I've ever encountered that, to be honest with you, on a project, like a construction project like this. I'm trying to think, Aaron, have you ever encountered that? No. Have you, Kevin? My experience has been you pick the designer, you bid it out, and the contractors are separate unless you make that purposeful and intentional decision under the statute to go to the design build route. And that statute has some built-in protections to try to address that.
Are we in contract with somebody now? Who does the maintenance? Current units?
They come out and inspect them, and I can't for the life of me think what the name of the company is.
Okay, that's what I asked earlier. Because if we've already got a contract with a company, that,
Wouldn't they say if we needed a whole new design?
I mean, that would somewhat negate the reason we would have to have an external designer come in, because we've already, our AC work is already contracted to a company to some extent. I mean, I'm using the gray area that, I mean, if we've already got a contract with a company and their contract with us is to maintain our AC unit, it seems like that would cover, we already have a relationship with the company for our AC units. I don't know. Seems like we would be going outside to get another relationship that we already have established.
Yeah, can we contact them and see if they do design work? You know, find out who it is that you have a contract with and see if they do design work?
Well, I think we can make them aware of an RFQ, right? And just have them submit a proposal. Just make sure all the people we know of that do this kind of work are aware of the RFQ.
Yeah, 30 is a placeholder, and then, as Alex said, they'll do some research and come back to us. And everybody all right with that? Heather wants 5, but you're on the record of being at 5,000, so. Everybody else all right with 30?
Yeah.
All right. What else? Is anything else on the? Oh, sewer capacity study. All right. Nope, I'll put my comments out there to make sure everybody we all know the, there's pros and cons on it, you know. We need to study, can we implement the installation of it, which is gonna be multi-million dollars? No, we don't have that kind of money. But it tells us what we need to do when we're talking with the county or SEMA. You know, that's information is knowledge, so you know where you stand. But spending $100,000 in this year, you know, tight. That's my 2 cents.
I think we need to spend it and get the questions answered that we all have. I know we're not going to spend multi-millions of dollars to implement anything, but we don't know, even if it's feasible, we don't know who might cooperate with getting this done. And we need, I think we just need answers, questions answered, so we can talk from a more informed point of view when we discuss this with anyone that whether it's the county or the state or the builders or our residents. We need to know, and I think this will provide those answers for us.
Thank you, David. Any other comments, questions?
Can we do it in phases? Like, can we have phase one contract, phase two contract? Because first question is a great one, right? Can we even do it?
And the answer would probably be no.
Well, I think that's what we discussed that last week, by the way. and That was a great point, Grant. I think we asked Alex, I was in favor of doing it only because we spent a long time at the retreat talking about priorities, and this was the top. Nothing has really changed, except the county staff said they won't participate in this study. Alex shared that with us last Friday. But to your point, Graham, I think we made the recommendation last year that there might be a point early in this study that it's quickly identified that physically there's really no way to connect. And at that point, yeah. So phase one is sort of a, can you do it? Even though I think the typical way would be a usage analysis, getting some numbers of what sewage for water treatment from a full build out would be around the hospital and around the future town center. I think last week we asked if we could reverse that and just do a quick, can you do this? Then go do the analysis. That's probably where the bigger cost is, I'm guessing, on the predicting the flow that you might need in a full build out. So I'd be okay with it, given that caveat. I'd forgotten about that.
Knowledge question here. In what manner is it that it wouldn't be feasible, I guess, is the easiest way I can ask that. I mean, like, what are some of the things that would cause it not to be feasible? I mean, I thought when y'all met with them, they said the pipes were there.
Yeah, that's a question I don't know that I'm skilled to answer.
Okay,
But
I mean, that's fair.
the bigger point was sort of to Grant's point about let's step into this and not sign a contract that spends upwards of 100 without doing some thinking about how we might save money if in fact feasible could also be the mayor's budget number. I mean, literally, if it's 2 miles versus 400 feet, well, that's a problem.
Yeah, I got you.
So I don't know. I'm going back to sort of this idea of we spent a half a day talking about priorities and for the future, and this might provide some negotiating room with the county, and they might cost share in the future. I don't know. It is odd, and it's not our job to do, but it is helpful, I think, to the development.
All right, thank y'all. Any comments? Yay, nay?
I really don't want to, but I feel like it feels like we're probably going to have to move forward. Either, I hate to say it, but either knowing it or having some political knowledge, if you will, to be able to negotiate. It feels like we're going to have to spend it.
And again, I assume the 100,000 is an estimate. Brad said they could get into it in 30 days, and this is not going to be feasible.
One quick question. Would you come to us before you go out to try and get this, or is this, once it's in the budget, you're going out?
We would come to you to award the contract.
So we'll have a chance to talk about,
Absolutely.
do we want to do phased or not?
Absolutely.
I think we made the point last week. I don't know if David did it or me, but this type of study is, I remember we talked, this different than sort of a retail market study that changes every business cycle. This is one that I think has some staying power in the sense that it's going to identify hard assets in the ground, who owns them, how far, feet, all that stuff doesn't change. Remember that? So we'll have a document that if we ever do something with the county, I could argue that we could say, give us half of our money back because we did some work for you. I don't know. But the bigger point was, it's not like a market analysis that will be out of date in 16 months. So
They're not going to try to move any of this piping, you think, when they do the Monroe Road widening? I mean, in my head, I'm wondering if, like, there could be some synergies there if they were moving that road.
These are all like questions that we won't know until a study's done.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, yeah.
That's That's why I think it's so important. We've got questions. This will get us some answers.
Okay, all right.
All right, what's the consensus?
Go for it.
Well, I got y'all two.
Yeah, I guess I'm in for it.
I'm in because you'll come back to us.
All right, we got, taking that one, 100,000 stays in. And the skid steer, we've already talked, that wasn't on there.
Yeah.
Items, let's see, now we're down into the park and rec.
So, we're not doing the ski.
Yes, yeah, unless somebody doesn't feel like we need it.
They said it would save us money.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm fine with that one.
okay.
We have storage.
Yep, they have storage.
Trailer.
All right, park and rec. I don't know if any of those are on the notables, but that doesn't mean we don't need to have a discussion on anything. I think we talked about some of the playground replacement at 150,000 seems a bit high. But any comments on anything on the park and rec?
So the 400 grand that's here, it's in this year's budget, and we're just rolling it over to next year. So is the Vickery portion of the Greenway is pretty close to being finished, so help me understand again. I know I asked this question, but where's that 400,000 going this year? Is that just because we haven't paid everybody yet?
Yep, so pretty much what's happened for the Greenway is we're paying as we go for these things that happen. So when they do big piece of the project, we essentially sign off a check on this. So this 400,000 is like the max payment. It's gonna go down before July 1, we know that, but we didn't wanna anticipate that on there. We just wanted to go ahead and show you guys and be super transparent. By July 1, this should be substantially
Exactly.
lower.
So, Stephen, as you know, with construction projects, they do a portion of the work, you make a payment. They do a portion of the work, you make a payment, right? You don't pay them all up front, or vice versa, right? They want to get paid a little bit for materials and things like this. So this project was in this budget. It's gonna kind of straddle 2 budget years. We don't know exactly how much is gonna be in this year and this year.
Gotcha.
So our plan with Eunice and Jamie and I working together was, instead of guessing, let's just put the number that it is right now, and then in either July or August, come back and do a budget amendment. We think it'll be less than this, but do a budget amendment to get it, because then we'll know how much should be in this year.
So, okay.
All right, any comments on any of the line items in park and rec?
Oh, yeah. That specific council initiative, $5,000
Oh,
again.
yeah, yeah, that's,
That needs to come off still.
yeah, that was in.
I don't take credit for that anymore.
Yeah, that was in his email.
It's an orphan. It's an orphan.
But everybody okay with $150,000 for replacing playground equipment in the park across the street?
What exactly is that gonna replace?
So the CIP called for 300,000. We cut that in half, and that's gonna cover the playground in the back right corner.
Okay, so like the monkey bars and a slide and things like
Yeah, so we're gonna have to take out all the equipment that's there right now. We're gonna have to regrade it, replace all that equipment. And nothing that we have can be reused, like that equipment is retiring, reached
The playground where they had to take.
the borders. Yes, ma'am.
like what?
It's like there's railings that they've had to take off. They've had to take off a slide and add a railing because it was a hazard and.
Yep,
right.
so it broke, old age, and then the playground company doesn't make those parts anymore, so we've had, yep, it's about to have its 19th birthday, yep, so we've had to put up safety measures to just keep it
That equipment it's been there 19 years?
about to hit 19.
Not
You're 19?
part, but the,
Yes, sir.
what
Yep.
we're
So
replacing.
that was before the 2012, when we got the Partif grant to do the two big playgrounds that you see. So it was pre that.
All right, everybody okay with that? No dissent? Okay.
Woohoo, playgrounds, yeah. Thank you.
And let's see,
I mean, that,
stormwater. There's not a, okay, well, the only thing on there, we need to, talk about the rate. I don't know if we're prepared to do that tonight. I don't know if y'all, I know we talked about it last week, 86 and 100. But did y'all crunch any numbers to see what we could live with as far as the rate's concerned?
So the way we kind of set the budget and the rates as they were is based on the number of high-priority safety projects that we had. And then it was just a breakdown between commercial and residential costs. So really, it's projects, and Kevin, correct me where I'm wrong, it's things like sinkholes, kind of safety issues, really.
How much is in our balance, the reserve fund and all of that? I know where the mayor's going, and I don't know that I thought this ahead of time, but I think he convinced me last week that even though we haven't raised stormwater fees in whatever, a decade, it feels difficult to double them or whatever the number is in 1 year. So I guess I'm curious as to those high priorities, how do we pare that number down if they're truly high and safety related, and then how much is in the stormwater reserve fund, and what's your best guess on how we can accomplish the safety things without doubling the rate? That's the $1 million question, right? It's tough. Sorry. It's a tough one.
No, so I'll just answer the easy question. In our reserves right now is $1 million, just over $1 million, 1,002,000. You make a really good point about how do we knock out these high priority safety issues in the most effective, efficient, cost-effective manner. I think that's a battle that I'm trying to tackle as well. It's an ongoing moving target. I think back in late March, I believe, maybe early April, presented one of the stormwater projects that was just the gift that kept on giving. We sinkhole on the surface, dug down, and an entire 180-foot stretch of metal pipe, the bottom of it was completely corroded. So those are the elements that we're trying to battle, and that's basically where we're coming up with that $700,000. And Councilman Richardson, as well as the Twin Pines issue, we're working through in addition to those high priority projects. So some of those flood mitigation, stream restorations type projects are encompassed within that $700,000. And so I know I didn't holistically answer that question.
No, and are those projects encompassed in the $700,000 with the intent to leave $1 million in reserve?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think that's the answer, probably. I would then say, let's step this over 2 years, maybe 3. My thinking, tap reserves to do the most critical high priority and build the fund back up over the next decade. But step into these rate increases with some notice. I just don't know how else to do it.
no, I was kind of going the same way, is possibly picking a number to increase it this year and then make it such that this has to be, I hate to throw this at you because you're gonna hate me, but it has to be reevaluated at each budget time so that it can be continuously increased to meet the number that you need. So, I mean, that way if you did $20 this year, $25 this year to the residential, maybe you do another 25 next year, and something like that there. I was a little bit less, I was more greedy with the, with the commercial. I actually did 50%, so a two-step.
That's what I said, two-step, maybe three, but you can't neglect that we've not raised it every year, so it feels like we're doubling even Indian Trails, which is not fair because Indian Trail has been paying a tiered rate for a lot longer. We're trying to catch up, but we're just trying to, it makes sense, it just doesn't feel good and probably doesn't sound good, and it could be taken out of context. So could we step into it over 2 to 3 years? And is there a policy we're breaking? I always want to think about that. Are we breaking a stormwater policy that says we need to have $1 million for emergencies? But these are emergencies, so I'm trying to figure that out. Or-
I would probably, I don't think it's a written policy. I think it's been the practice and the protocol. My understanding, it was set by a board previously. Mayor, you might be able to give us some history here.
It was a guideline.
I would,
That's what I would put it.
yeah, I do think it's probably a good number, a good best practice. I wouldn't go too much lower than that, just from a cash flow standpoint. If you have, you know, a very large project that it comes up, right? You know, look at Twin Pines, right? It's probably going to be a hundreds of thousands of dollars project, and you know, you could have a sinkhole open up, and then all of a sudden, you know, if you take a few $100,000 from your reserves, all of a sudden your reserves are, you know, 400,000. I mean, we can all come up with disaster scenarios, and it probably won't happen, but I do think with financial planning, I recommend kind of, you got to consider worst case scenario, right? That's why we all buy insurance.
So, doing some rough math, I'd actually said $67 per ERU and $67 per residential. And for a two-step process over 2 years.
I got a three-step process over 3 years, 13 cents and 9 cents. No, I mean, $13 and $9. So the revenue from stormwater fees right now are at 490,000, is that
Correct.
right?
Mayor, what was your, I didn't get your third step on that.
46 to
Proposed budget.
plus
Correct.
13,
Correct.
59,
And that's a good reserve.
33. That's a 30% increase.
Oh,
to it
for the
over 3
reserves.
years. $9 to
We
maybe
think so,
42.
yes, we think that plan for high, as Alex mentioned.
I was looking at
the cash flow, making sure we've got the cash available to flow in and
business
out.
is going from 33 to 100, so that's a 300% increase. So you'd have to go
It's only a
33.
200% increase.
I'm sorry, 200% increase. I'm a financial planner, I know this stuff.
Yeah. Oh.
Don't bring me your money. Okay, but I didn't get the mayor's $9. It seemed like
I
adding.
don't think he's raising it to 100 over the 3 years.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So that's how I got my number, is
Yeah.
that 67 is, we're asking, your original numbers were 200%, 67 puts you at 100%, and then 67 in residential basically gives you a $20, basically a $20 step up for residential. And then that would leave you with another $20 that you would have to do next year. That would be the general idea.
Yeah, and then my idea is 30% increase a year is a lot.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Whether you say it's $9 or $13, you know, that's not a lot of money, but it's 30%. So somebody asked me, well, I got a 30% tax increase on my stormwater, but then, you know, you tell them what the amount was, and then they live with it. That's my theory.
Kevin, $700,000. Is that represent the expected revenue from increasing the rates to 86 and 100 per ERU.
Yes, sir.
So if we go anything less than that, we're gonna change that 700.
Yes, or any of the other items that are proposed within this stormwater budget, correct?
Well, that 700 is the one that's directly related to the fees. So if you got a quick calculator, that, if we only bump it from 86, I mean, not to 86, but to whatever the magic number is, what that'll actually yield for that 700? I don't know, like you probably have, you already know how many houses there are. You probably know how many ERUs there are. If you plug in the new proposed rates, that'll give you the exact dollar amount you need to replace that 700 with.
Yes, essentially. So with this spreadsheet here, I did plug in those two 67 per ERU and 67 residential, and that decreased the revenue down to about $300,000.
So another,
Okay, so we can actually see exactly what we're proposing, what that'll amount to. Instead of 7, it'll be,
So that is for the entire stormwater budget, the fund itself, yeah, so the total fund is that 1.1.
so what's the number we need to hit to fund it fully, Kevin?
1.1,
1.1, all right.
as
so-
proposed,
So there's a gap of
300,
300.
correct.
Already.
What's your question?
Yes.
Does that 800 already include the already 400? Am I understanding that?
Yes, ma'am. It does. You're understanding it correctly.
So then, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Is your question about the 400, which is in the Powell bill money that's already in?
No, just, I believe her question, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the existing revenue, is that included in there? And it is.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. So
Sorry.
we would only be raising it 409,000.
Yes. Yeah, essentially, yeah.
So when you say 1.1 million, that's for the projects, tackling all high priority projects next year?
Correct.
Okay. And to Councilmember Richardson's point, so if we were to phase it out over 2-3 years, right, then
Wondering, yeah.
we wouldn't need 1.1 million.
Correct.
Okay. You just use your savings, right, your reserves? Well, I mean, I think if we just don't do them all in the same year, we wouldn't even need to go into the reserves, right, potentially? Yeah,
I mean,
we just don't do them.
I mean, depends on how high priority is.
Yeah.
If everything's an emergency, nothing's an emergency. That's sort of the rule. So maybe there's a high, medium, low, high priority.
You run the risk with that of increasing a backlog of these high priority, kind of like what we've seen this year. So if you can't get through them all.
And then they all become emergencies.
And we still have the option of doing a budget amendment later on and pulling this over.
Yeah, going
That's always that's always the fail-safe. We can always come back mid-year. This is a static budget for the year. Or it's not static, I mean. But we're also gonna be done, you're gonna have a skid steer. You're gonna have some in-house capabilities and maybe can tackle some of these things too. So I would trust you to be creative. You're a smart guy, and Alex and the whole team is really smart. I just think the optics of the increase, as much as it's probably deserved because of the 10 years of doing nothing, keeping them low, I think you're gonna have to live within a different scheme for 2 years, maybe 3. I don't know who's got a motion on the table, or not a motion, but a number on the table. Do you have something, Steve, that was,
I've already presented it, 67.
okay, I missed that part.
And
Okay.
then I've got mine 3 years.
Is that phasing it in the proposed increase over 2 years, or just do the 1 year?
Yeah, both of those are basically half of what you need to get to where you need to be at. Because it's what, 33 now for business, 67 is roughly 2/3 of the way. Another $33 will be 100%. Same for the residential, right? It's like 86. Raise it up to this, you got another $20 next year that you're gonna need to raise it.
So if I'm hearing that correctly, then for next fiscal year, we'd raise it
50% of what was proposed, and then the following fiscal year would be the additional 50%?
That would be
Am I
my
hearing that
plan.
right?
I mean, the thought pattern is that this work, I look at stormwater as one of the things that we have to do. It's required. That's what part of our charter is for. So it's not like we can't do it. And so, I mean, we've got to get to those numbers somehow, regardless. And so, I mean, eventually you're gonna have to raise it to where it's self-sustaining. That would be my thought anyway. So yeah, it would be over 2 years.
Why is commercial more than residential? I'm sorry if I missed that part. The proposal, it was what, 100 and versus 89, I think.
No, really no reason to the rhyme there. It was really just kind of looking at what the needs were and basing numbers off that. I originally just proposed that. I figured it'd go over a little better with increasing the commercial a little bit more than the residential.
Yeah, and my point, I've been on the council since 2005, so I don't know what the latest is, but there were many, many years we didn't have enough time to do all the projects. Money would carry over, and that's why we, at some point, we were up at, 1.5 million in revenue. And so I just don't like growing the size of government on a, don't really need to. Always come back and make some adjustments if we need more money, but we can't go, once you raise the rate, the odds of lowering it are slim and none.
I mean, that does this. I mean, if this turns out to be good, then maybe you don't raise it next year. But my concern is that some of those years that there was extra money, I think it's because, I'm just gonna be blunt here, I don't think the individual was getting the job done sometimes, so.
All righty, well, we got some options on the table. What's the council want to do?
I'm for phased, raise it over 2-3 years, but I would like to see equal. So if we're raising residential 50, I want to see commercial. That's my only thing. I'm not a fan of doing like 60-40 or whatever.
You got to pick 2 or 3. You got to pick 2 years or 3 years. That's the
Well, you technically don't. Literally, we're just voting on a budget for this next year. You could do half this year, and then next year we're gonna reevaluate it again.
Yeah,
So I don't wanna lock us in. I think Kevin's gotta be creative. Kevin's gotta use his skid steer. Kevin's gotta do some evaluating of projects. The rain's gonna fall and change things every year, but I don't know that we have to say 2 or 3 year plan right now. These numbers they're not arbitrary by any means. They're based upon a real list, but I'd be okay with your motion to just raise them 50% this year instead of the 100.
Yep.
For each,
50% on
for each
residential
category.
would be 23, so 69. Residential, and then 17
Yeah.
commercial, is that right? Yeah. 50. Is that math right?
You didn't like that, did you? So what did that show us? I'm sorry. So I see the revenue, but what's that saying?
300,000 over. So we're at 400. That
Additional
raises
3.
3. We would be less than what we were hoping.
Yeah, I guess I was better with this, with
The grant took us to
commercial
the,
paying a little more and the residential paying a little less.
All right, I'll go with,
let's go with Steve's
Yeah,
original.
yep.
Just-
I'll go with it.
let's go with that.
So we're both of them at 67? You can get those same calls about the roads that you're gonna get on that.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, you built up a armor plate against it.
Y'all can take, no, I mean,
Well,
the truth is the truth.
And,
so.
well, and just a caveat, one thing I learned this year, I think we all learned this year, is that, that having a healthy stormwater fund is also helpful for road improvements.
Yeah.
Don't forget that if it's got curb, gutter, drainage, whatever, you can tap the stormwater fund. So Union West Business Park, we're gonna talk about that later tonight. They need road improvements, but we can't, it's not ours to do. But if we ever needed to have a part, that road needs curb, gutter, drainage. Terribly expensive, so we can't do it in a regular budget or PAL bill, but if you end up with a $2 million excess in stormwater, then I would start building some roads. The failed roads, all of those you talked about are gonna need some sort of stormwater. So,
All right, we got it 67 for both residential and commercial. Everybody?
Yeah.
All right. And then the next on that list is impervious surface study, 35,000. So if you just raised your rate 50%, why would you do a study? And I just tell you, you need to raise your rate.
Well, and my big thing about this one here is that this is gonna spend us more money in the long run because it feels like something that's gonna need to be maintained. And if we ever have to raise it again, it would feel like there would be some potential legal ramifications that you would need to have another study to to see how things have changed. And so this kind of seemed like it just kind of put us into an endless cycle of having to do these readjustments over time. And maybe I'm wrong. So it just feels like it'd be easier to do a set fee and be done with it versus, because it's gonna be easier to calculate. I mean, you were calculating it on demand right here in front of us. If you're gonna have, if we ask the same thing after this study, I mean, you'd have to go back and figure out what those numbers would be. So you tell me. It doesn't feel like that would be the harder to go to.
No, you make very good points, Councilman Ayers. I think the only argument against that is just the equitability factor and having individuals or commercial lots with significant more impervious surface paying the same amount. So I think those are the two arguments on the table at the moment.
and I'm gonna suggest something you'll laugh at, but it's GIS, it's square footage, it's parking lots and roofs. Not to say it's not hard work, our town is relatively small. I think a college intern could do, I could have done that as a college intern, and I wasn't that smart as a college intern, but that feels like a,
Well, he was at Harvard, by the way. That's what he
yeah,
said.
all right. It feels achievable with a summer dedicated to someone who wants to work in government, spend the summer with us, work with Patrick, do sidewalk studies, do all that kind of stuff. But in your downtime, pull up GIS and do some calculations. That's what I would think.
Yeah, do that in-house rather than pay.
Do it very cheaply in-house. I did worse jobs as interns, and I think we all did, so. I'm not missing anything. It's measuring building roofs and parking lots from aerial photography that's out there. I would take it out this year.
All right, well, I agree. Anybody else comment?
Which one?
Impervious.
Impervious, that's what I thought, okay.
Silent generators.
We're still using CBs. I mean, well, let's get rid of those. I'm kidding.
Impervious study?
Take it out?
Yeah, take it out.
Take it out, okay. All righty. That is it. And it's 7 o'clock, isn't it? Close to it?
Very close.
All right, any other comments on any other thing in the budget? Doesn't have to, like I said, it doesn't have to be on this. Did anybody have any concerns on something they saw?
I was very serious. in
Yes,
that comment.
yes.
About,
The fact that we're still like 1.5 million in the hole.
Yeah, we'll get there. Alrighty, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second,
Did they already cover that?
So moved.
no, I mean,
motion by Ms. Groom, second by
No, I don't
Mr.
think
Ayers. All in
anything-
favor?
Aye.
I
Aye, ayes have
I
it,
don't think
alrighty.
anything prevents them from doing it.
I'm gonna
It's a
take
chicken and egg.
Yeah, we
thing,
got,
where
6 minutes.
Moment break.
If they
Have to use the
don't,
bathroom.
if you're a developer and you are being told that there's no capacity, you're not going to go out and